Sweden just sent a wake-up call to NATO. In a move that has shocked European nations, the nation has officially unveiled its 19th and largest ever military aid package to Ukraine. We're talking about a 16 billion Swedish krona, which is roughly $1.6 billion, in new support. To put that further in perspective, this one aid package is larger than the contribution that some of the largest countries have sent in a year. But this isn't just about money. No, this is much bigger than simply financial support. It's a story about a nation fundamentally changing its defense strategy. It's about why Sweden is suddenly preparing for the unthinkable, and why that matters not just to Ukraine, but to all of the world. But why now? And why Sweden out of all the NATO members? Let's break it down. To really understand how massive this moment is, we've got to go back in time. Sweden's reputation as a neutral power isn't new. It dates back over 200 years. Since 1812, Sweden has managed to remain neutral during every major international military alliance and conflict, including both world wars and the Cold War. For over 2 centuries, Sweden's foreign policy was defined by neutrality, and that wasn't by accident. After the Napoleonic Wars in the early 1800s, Sweden made a conscious decision to step away from the cycle of European conflict that had cost so many lives. Instead of pursuing military dominance, it focused on diplomacy, stability, and self-reliance. It was a strategy built on the belief that a strong, independent Sweden could protect its interests without entangling itself in the wars of others. And for the most part, it worked. By steering clear of both World Wars and the Cold War's military blocs, Sweden carved out a role as a respected peace broker, quietly strong but intentionally removed from the front lines. Despite its neutrality, Sweden has built a solid military defense, which they continue to expand. In Global Firepower 2025 rankings, Sweden is 27th out of 145 countries, putting them amongst the top tier of global military power. The Swedish Armed Forces have 24,400 active duty personnel, supported by 7,100 reserves, 4,700 part-time and 22,000 Home Guard troops. They have plans to increase this 88,000 total manpower to 115,000 by 2030. And it's not just manpower. On land, they operate approximately 110 main battle tanks, with plans to acquire an additional 110 Leopard 2 variants. Its air force, meanwhile, consists of 105 JAS-39 Gripen fighters, with the intention of expanding the Gripen E fleet to 60, plus 4 new Embraer C-390 transport aircraft ordered. Their navy commands 5 Visby-class stealth corvettes, presently being upgraded with missiles, and 4 operational submarines, with 2 more being built. It's a solid force, growing fast with cutting-edge engineering. As of 2025, the defense budget is just as strong, hitting $7.72 billion in 2022, pledging to increase that spending to 3.5% by 2030. Despite building this capable modern military, Sweden remained proudly neutral. But in 2022, everything changed. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the shock was felt across Europe. However, in Stockholm, it triggered something deeper. It shattered decades of European security and made it clear that neutrality could no longer guarantee safety. In Stockholm, decision-makers began asking very difficult and uneasy questions. If Russian President Vladimir Putin was willing to invade a neighboring democracy without warning, what might he do next? And more urgently, if he wasn't deterred by NATO's eastern edge, would countries outside the alliance be even more vulnerable? For the first time in living memory, Sweden's leaders and the public began to seriously ask the question, what if neutrality isn't enough anymore? Even before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Sweden had grown uneasy. Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008, its annexation of Crimea in 2014, and its increase in military exercises in the Baltic Sea caused concern. As Russian aggression increased, Sweden began negotiations with NATO, and in March 2024, Sweden made it official. It joined NATO. So after more than 2 centuries of military non-alignment, Sweden crossed a historic threshold and became the alliance's 32nd member. It wasn't a decision taken lightly. The process involved intense political debate, a careful weighing of public opinion, and months of diplomatic negotiation. But in the end, there was no other choice. Russia's aggression had redrawn the map of European security, and neutrality no longer felt like protection. In reality, it felt like a risk. Sweden recognized that its security was no longer about protecting its borders, but about standing shoulder to shoulder with its democratic allies. The move signaled a profound shift in mindset, one from standing apart to standing together. And now, just 1 year later, we're seeing the full impact of that decision, because Sweden isn't just in NATO, it's leading. Sweden's $1.6 billion aid package is not just big, it's unprecedented for Sweden. Defense Minister Pål Jonson laid it out bluntly. Russia has the initiative in the war, and we must support Ukraine to break that trend. The sense of urgency is driving everything behind this new aid effort. Most of the funding is aimed at procuring new weapons and systems from Swedish and European defense industries. In other words, this isn't leftover stock. They're placing new orders, pushing factories to work faster, and getting equipment built specifically for Ukraine's needs. Around $920 million will go to Sweden's Defense Material Administration, which will order new equipment to send to Ukraine. Another $500 million is dedicated to Ukraine's own defense industry. Ukraine has already raised over $1.5 billion from its Western partners to support that industry as of February 2025, with Sweden's $500 million taking Ukraine a step closer to its $10 billion target. Add all of this to a further $50 million dedicated to gear Sweden will ship from its existing military stockpiles, and you get a bumper military aid package. What's more, Sweden is not waiting around. Around 70% of this package will be delivered within the year. That means Ukraine gets help quickly at a time when its forces are stretched thin across a 600-mile front. But it's not just about the quantity of help, but giving Ukraine exactly what they want. The Ukrainians have been clear about what they need to keep fighting and winning: ammunition, air defenses, drones, naval assets, satellite communications, and infantry gear. Sweden's latest military aid package aims to tick every one of those boxes. Among the standout contributions are unmanned mine-clearing vessels, vital for combating the rising threat of sea mines in the Black Sea and along Ukraine's coast. With commercial and military vessels facing constant danger in mined waters, these systems are critical for restoring safe navigation routes, as well as securing maritime supply lines, especially for grain exports and humanitarian aid. Sweden is also increasing naval support with the transfer of 16 CB-90 combat boats, now enhanced with radar systems that boost Ukraine's ability to control riverine and coastal operations. Originally developed by Sweden for high-speed insertions and patrols, the CB-90 can reach speeds of 40 knots, or about 46 miles per hour, and carry up to 21 troops. These boats are proving useful in Ukraine's defense of the Dnipro River and other contested waterways. The radar upgrades provided in this package will give crews a tactical edge in surveillance and navigation during fast-paced missions. In the air, Sweden's support includes ground service vehicles for Ukraine's F-16 fighter jets, which are being integrated into the Ukrainian Air Force for both defensive patrols and precision strike roles. These vehicles play an essential role by refueling, arming, and maintaining the jets so they can be rapidly deployed. As Ukraine prepares to operate one of NATO's most versatile fighter aircraft, this type of logistical support ensures it can do so effectively. To strike behind enemy lines, the package also includes long-range drones and ground attack missiles. While the specific drone models haven't been publicly confirmed, Ukraine has successfully deployed systems like the Turkish-made Bayraktar TB2 and its own domestically produced long-range drones. Sweden's additions are expected to expand that strike capability further, supporting operations against Russian logistics hubs, command centers, and artillery positions well beyond the front line. They've also added spare parts to the military package. These components ensure that previously donated Western tanks, vehicles, and artillery pieces already in use can stay in the fight, rather than being sidelined by avoidable breakdowns, thus ensuring all machinery can be used in defense. Sweden's contributions reflect a clear understanding of what Ukraine needs, not only to hold the line, but to press forward with confidence. It's a package based on resilience, reach, and sustained operational power. But that's not all they're providing. They're also giving support for infrastructure and logistics, not just weapons. Sweden's made a point of ensuring Ukrainian air bases stay fully functional, not just now, but through a long, grinding war. That kind of thinking shows just how seriously Stockholm is taking this. But why now? What's changed? The situation on the ground in Ukraine is becoming increasingly intense. Russian forces are now conducting offensive operations across nearly the entire front line, with pressure mounting from Kharkiv in the northeast to Kherson in the south, according to battlefield reports and assessments from Ukrainian officials. In heavily congested areas like Avdiivka, Bakhmut, and the broader Donetsk region, where over 75% of recent clashes have taken place, the fighting has intensified. Ukrainian units are under constant fire and have had to reposition or pull back from certain sectors, adapting to shifting lines and relentless assaults. Yet despite the mounting strain, Ukraine continues to hold firm, making every inch of territory costly for Russian forces. Both sides are stretched. While Ukraine is facing fatigue after more than 2 years of grueling combat with limited rotations and stretched supply lines, Russia too is losing manpower at a staggering rate. Western intelligence estimates that Russia has suffered more than 300,000 casualties since the full-scale invasion began, including tens of thousands of elite troops lost in brutal urban fighting. This is a war of attrition, and neither side can afford complacency. But this is where Sweden's aid package could be decisive. By delivering advanced systems like radar-equipped CB-90 assault boats, mine-clearing vessels, and long-range drones, Sweden is helping Ukraine plug critical gaps in its defense and increase its strategic options. These aren't just symbolic contributions. Instead, they're practical tools designed to shift the balance over time, especially in key areas like coastal security, air operations, and logistics. And beyond the front line, the humanitarian picture is devastating. More than 40,000 civilians have been killed or injured, over 4 million are internally displaced, and nearly 7 million Ukrainians have been forced to flee the country entirely. The toll on families, infrastructure, and daily life is immense and, unfortunately, rising by the day. Sweden's growing role in supporting resilience isn't just military, but it's moral, strategic, and deeply humanitarian. But while Sweden has decided to move fast, NATO hasn't. Behind closed doors, frustration is mounting over drawn-out decision-making processes that are lagging behind the realities on the battlefield. Former NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg recently acknowledged the problem, warning that serious delays in support have meant serious consequences on the battlefield. So is Sweden shaking NATO from the inside? Let's be clear, Stockholm isn't trying to cause problems. In fact, they are doing what many believe every NATO country should be doing just now, leading, funding, and fighting for Ukraine's survival. Sweden's latest aid package is also turning heads not just for its size, but for the speed with which it was delivered. It's a bold move from a country that only formally joined the alliance in 2024, and one that underscores Sweden's determination to make its presence felt. NATO has committed more than 100 billion euros, or $109.2 billion, in military, economic, and humanitarian support to Ukraine since the start of the war, with key contributions from the US, Germany, the UK, and Poland. However, Sweden's swift actions are a sharp contrast and perhaps raise the idea that NATO has become bogged down in bureaucracy. It's also exposing NATO's present disunity, at a time when President Donald Trump is distancing the US from Ukraine, slamming Zelensky, and even hinting at pulling support completely. Sweden has stepped up and showed it won't be intimidated from doing what it believes is right. They may perhaps even force NATO to rethink its power structure so that the US can't call the shots anymore, and show that small countries can lead just as effectively. So is Sweden causing NATO problems? Not directly, but by being bold and active, it's most certainly exposing the cracks. Now let's talk Trump. Sweden's Jonsson made it clear, this is not just a responsibility on Sweden's shoulders. His call to action wasn't aimed at Sweden alone, it was aimed at the bigger powers. What are you going to do now? Right now, all eyes are on Washington. Trump's stance on NATO and Ukraine has introduced a new layer of uncertainty across Europe. His "no more blank checks" message may resonate with American voters concerned about overseas spending, but has worried European leaders. As he put it from the Oval Office in March 2025, "If they don't pay, I'm not going to defend them. No, I'm not going to defend them." He added, "They should be paying more," arguing that even after his first term prompted increased defense spending across the alliance, it's still not enough. European leaders worry that if the US pulls back militarily, financially, or diplomatically, this could leave a vacuum that Russia would be quick to exploit. NATO's current Secretary-General Mark Rutte has tried to steady the ship, saying, "I know some may have concerns about NATO's future, but the transatlantic partnership remains the bedrock of our alliance." He acknowledged that President Trump had made clear the expectation that we in Europe must do more in terms of defense spending, which is a message that many allies are now taking seriously. That makes Sweden's position matter more than ever. While others debate, Sweden is delivering. If the US won't lead, someone has to, and right now, that someone is Sweden. It's a small country with just over 10 million people, but it's punching far above its weight. With clear strategy, bold spending, and no hesitation, Sweden is stepping into a role few expected and doing it with purpose. The latest batch of military aid is just the start. It's delivered plenty in the past, and more is coming. With this latest package, Sweden's total military and financial support to Ukraine reaches about $7.8 billion, and they have promised that almost $2.95 billion is being delivered in 2025 alone. That's some aid from a country of just over 10 million people. And here's the kicker, Sweden's not stopping there. When it hits the 3.5% of GDP mark by 2030, it will become one of the top defense spenders in Europe. This is notable when you consider that major economies like Germany and Italy have faced challenges in reaching this, with Italy considering reclassifying certain expenditures to approach the target. Domestically, Sweden is expanding arms production across its defense industry, with a focus on supplying both national forces and contributing to NATO's logistics chains. It's also investing heavily in space-based surveillance and communications infrastructure, aiming to boost early warning systems and secure digital networks across Northern Europe. On the ground, troop numbers are increasing, and Sweden is improving its rapid deployment capabilities to ensure forces can mobilize quickly in a crisis. But perhaps most significantly, Sweden is deepening regional cooperation with Finland, Norway, and the Baltic states. This includes joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, and operational deployments designed to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. Sweden is also contributing to NATO's new Baltic Sentry mission, aimed at enhancing the alliance's presence in the Baltic Sea and protecting critical undersea infrastructure. The operation reflects growing concern about hybrid threats and the vulnerability of maritime assets, particularly in light of recent incidents in the region. Swedish forces have also been involved in forward land deployments alongside Finnish troops and are contributing to rotational NATO forces in Latvia. From shared surveillance missions to cross-border logistics coordination, Sweden is cementing its role as a key security partner in Northern Europe. And with its defense spending set to outpace much of the continent, it's helping to raise the bar. And let's be clear, this is bipartisan. Sweden's coalition government includes a mix of the moderates, liberals, Christian Democrats, and Centre Party, with strong support from the Sweden Democrats, who, surprisingly, despite their nationalist leanings, are fully backing this aid effort. Mattias Enholm, deputy chair of the Parliamentary Defence Committee, said plainly that Ukraine will gain new capabilities, both above and below the sea surface. That includes unmanned naval vessels, new radar systems, and enhanced coastal defense tools. Meanwhile, Michael Oskarsson from the Christian Democrats didn't hold back when describing the scale of the threat. Drawing on intelligence from both Sweden's military intelligence and security service, also known as MUST, and Denmark's intelligence community, he warned that Sweden and the rest of Europe should be prepared for a new regional war, possibly within just a few years. And when a country that stayed out of both world wars is sounding alarms like that, people most certainly listen. Sweden's not just thinking about Ukraine, it's thinking about itself and about the entire Northern European region. If Russia pushes further into the Baltics or ramps up pressure in the Arctic or the Barents Sea, Sweden needs to be ready and organized. This aid package is a signal that it's not just preparing to help others, but to defend its own territory if it comes to that. Gulen Avci, the Liberal Party's defense spokesperson, focused on one specific area: long-range strike capability. According to Avci, Ukraine has asked for systems that can reach deep into Russian-held territory, targeting command centers, ammo depots, and supply routes. Sweden's response? They're stepping up production of long-range drones and ground-target missiles designed specifically for that kind of mission. It's precisely for that purpose, she said, to reach Russian military targets in depth. Remember, this is a country that only joined NATO a year ago, and it's already delivering military aid with this level of precision, this level of strategic planning, and this level of political will in such a short space of time. It's fair to say that Ukraine is grateful but a little surprised. They've been sounding the alarm for months, saying they need more help, faster real help but with fewer conditions. And while some nations have hesitated, Sweden has acted decisively. The message from Kyiv has been consistent: send us what we need to survive. And Sweden has replied, we're on it. But the impact of this package won't just be measured in dollars or drones, it's going to be measured in outcomes on the battlefield. By giving Ukraine the tools to defend and maybe even push forward, Sweden is helping prevent even further Russian advances, and in doing so, buying time. Time to persuade other countries to give more aid, time to provide more training, and time for a longer-term strategy to come together. That time also matters when it comes to diplomacy. With talk of potential ceasefire negotiations looming, the more territory Ukraine can hold or even reclaim, the stronger its position will be at the ceasefire table. Every day that Ukrainian forces avoid being pushed further back is a day that preserves leverage in any future talks. Thus, Sweden's support isn't just helping on the battlefield, it's helping shape what a future settlement could look like. So what does this mean for Sweden? In a word, transformed. Sweden is now fully embedded in NATO, standing not on the sidelines but firmly on the front foot. It's emerged as a key backer of Ukraine, not just with words, but with actions. A nation once associated with quiet diplomacy is now playing a pivotal role in reshaping the course of a major European conflict. But Sweden isn't just looking at tanks, missiles, and drones. It's thinking bigger. It's laying the foundations for space-based defense technology, such as satellite surveillance, secure communications, precision guidance systems, and the kind of future-facing tools that will shape the conflicts of tomorrow. This isn't reactionary policy, it's a strategic vision. And that vision is clear. Sweden intends to become one of the most capable, adaptable, and forward-thinking militaries in Northern Europe, not because it wants to go to war, but because it understands that stability requires strength and deterrence requires credibility. In doing so, Sweden is writing a new chapter in its national history, one where it doesn't just protect its own interests, but contributes meaningfully to the wider security of the continent, one where it steps in, stands tall, and shows what real commitment looks like, not just to treaties and alliances, but to principles. To freedom, to sovereignty, to those who stand under threat, even when it's difficult. Because this isn't just about Ukraine, it's about Europe. It's about sending a message to all allies, to adversaries, and to anyone who's watching that aggression won't go unanswered. And for a small country with a long history of peacekeeping, that message carries weight. So yes, Ukraine is surprised. No one expected Sweden to take such a bold, uncompromising stance, but perhaps that's exactly the kind of surprise the world needs right now. But what do you think? Is Sweden showing Ukraine's allies how it's done? Has it set a new standard for what military support looks like in 2025? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear from you.